A warm welcome to Diplomatic Channel and a very Merry Christmas. I'm Amarachi Ubani here in Lagos. While many are cocooned in their homes enjoying the company and warmth of the season, we're sparing a thought for those living in hotspots around the world, especially for those in Ukraine who've been the target of ongoing so-called special military operation by Russia, which shows no sign of stopping. This is not to minimize wars and conflicts in other parts of the world, but you will agree the impact of the war in Ukraine has been far-reaching than imagined. And last week, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy paid a very brief visit to the United States. He met with the U.S. President Joe Biden at the White House, met with outgoing House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and addressed the U.S. Congress. We'll look a little more deeply into his whirlwind visit in a bit and discuss later with geopolitical analyst Edward Ejike after a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles.
Three busload of shivering migrants have been dumped in front of the Washington, D.C. home of the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. The buses, believed to be from Texas, dropped the asylum seekers off in 18-degree weather in front of the Naval Observatory, where the Vice President lives, late on Saturday. Reports say the migrants were given blankets and put on another bus bound for a local church.
Ich weiß, wie viel diese Krise Ihnen alle...
The German President, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, has called for fair peace in Ukraine in his Christmas address to the nation, saying peace was not yet within reach. He added that until there is peace, it's a humanitarian imperative that we support those who are being attacked and oppressed. He also told Germans we did not panic and we did not let ourselves be divided.
Der Menschlichkeit, dass wir den Angegriffenen, den Bedrohten und Bedrückten beistehen.
Renewed clashes broke out over the weekend between police and members of the Kurdish community, angry at the killing on Friday of 3 members of their community. Several cars were overturned and small fires set alight near Republic Square, the traditional venue for demonstrations in the city where Kurds earlier held a peaceful protest.
Welcome back. Ukrainians try to make the most of this Christmas day, despite the threat of more attacks from Russia, which has been deploying missiles targeting energy infrastructure and leaving thousands of people without power or heat in freezing temperatures. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who returned from a brief visit to the United States with a bag full of promises, said Ukraine will create its own Christmas miracle.
Дорогий народе, цими днями мільйони людей в Україні та світі.
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy's message came on Christmas Eve with a background that seemed like he was outside. He said Ukrainians will create their own miracles this Christmas by showing they remain unbowed despite Russian attacks that have plunged millions into darkness. He also said that while freedom came at a high price, slavery would cost even more.
Кулями даху власної оселі.
And on Christmas morning, Ukrainian worshippers attended a Christmas morning service in Kharkiv. In the past, Christians mostly celebrated Christmas in early January. This year, the holiday is celebrated by many on December 25th, as Ukraine's main Orthodox church broke with Moscow and turned its face towards the west. But amidst the small celebrations bringing hope everywhere in Ukraine, remains a fear of a Russian strike like this one on Christmas Eve on the recaptured city of Kherson, which killed at least 8 people and left bloodied corpses on the road. The Kherson Regional State Administration released a video on social media showing burnt cars, bodies, blood on the ground, and damaged buildings. The video also showed Kherson Regional Governor Yaroslav Yanushevich and emergency services working at the scene. On Friday, residents of Kramatorsk cleared glass shards from broken windows of a residential building damaged by the Russian strike. It's horror, says one of the local residents. Another expressed hatred for the perpetrators. The attacks come days after President Volodymyr Zelenskyy was in the United States for a brief visit, starting at the White House with U.S. President Joe Biden. He said it was a meeting to strengthen Ukraine's resilience and defense capabilities amid repeated Russian missile and drone attacks on the country's energy and water supplies in the dead of winter. During a press conference later, the U.S. president said America will provide $1.85 billion in additional military assistance for Ukraine, including a transfer of the Patriot air defense system. The Patriot system is a defensive system and not escalatory, says President Biden. It is considered to be one of the most advanced U.S. air defense systems and offers protection against aircraft, cruise, and ballistic missiles. It typically includes launchers along with radar and other support vehicles.
I'm announcing the next tranche of our security assistance to Ukraine. $1.85 billion package of security assistance that includes both direct transfers of equipment that Ukraine needs, as well as contracts to supply ammunition Ukraine will need in the months ahead for its artillery, its tanks, and its rocket launchers.
Russia said the U.S. plans to supply the Patriot surface-to-air missile defense system was an important step in creating an effective air shield. Ahead of his address to the U.S. Congress, President Zelenskyy met with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Over the last 10 months since the invasion, you, Mr. President, and the Ukrainian people have met Putin's brutality with a strong will. Your visit comes as the Congress prepares to again pass another consequential round of security, economic, and humanitarian assistance.
And when he addressed Congress, he aimed at persuading Republican lawmakers to continue to fund his country's defense against Russia.
It's a great honor for me to be at the U.S. Congress and speak to you and all Americans. Against all odds and doom and gloom scenarios, Ukraine didn't fall. Ukraine is alive and kicking.
The Ukrainian president also told the U.S. Congress that tens of billions of dollars of aid it had approved to help fight a Russian invasion was not a charity, but an investment in global security.
Thank you for both financial packages you have already provided us with and the ones you may be willing to decide on. Your money is not charity. It's an investment in the global security and democracy that we handle in the most responsible way.
The Ukrainian president joined a long list of world leaders to address joint meetings of the Senate and House, a tradition that began in 1874 with a visit by Hawaiian King Kalakaua and included almost legendary wartime visits by British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, as well as kings, queens, and one pope. There are still no signs of peace talks to end the war in Ukraine, and both Russia and Ukraine have signaled a willingness to keep fighting, although President Zelenskyy said he discussed a 10-point Ukrainian peace formula with the U.S. president.
Yes. There we go.
Joining me now is geopolitical analyst Edward Ejike. He joins me from Texas. Edward, thank you so much for joining me on Diplomatic Channel, and a Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Well, thank you for having me, and a Merry Christmas to you and your team and everybody in Nigeria. Hopefully, it's all good, and we'll see what happens, come next year.
Yes, and it's quite unfortunate, that Ukraine and all the other hotspots around the world, even here in Africa, cannot enjoy some peace this Christmas. Did you ever think the war, at least in Ukraine, would last this long? I mean, this is February up until now. That's the better part of the whole 2022.
Well, again, wars don't have timetable on it until the two warring sides decide, okay, we're going to end this, for the sake of humanity and the sake of, the destruction, whether it is immediate to their own environment or the wave that it carries beyond their own geography. But remember when America went to Iraq, and they said, "Oh, then Vice President Dick Cheney said, oh, it was going to be a cakewalk," and that lasted as long as it did. And then you have what is going on in DRC and Rwanda. That has gone on for as long as who knows. And then the UN, the largest UN peacekeeping force in the world, is in that part of the world. So it's just that the Ukraine war is an European war. When you look at some of the world most outrageous wars, it's always been European war, which is World War One and World War Two. So it's always when it's European involved that the whole world is concerned and the whole world is drawn into it. But there are hotspots all over the world, South America, Africa, Asia. But it's always this Anglo-Saxon war, that everybody else is meant to listen to or be cognizant of. So I'm hoping that as we go in and begin to understand ourselves, that look, love thy neighbor becomes a factor, becomes something people need to develop and enhance. But why should I be concerned about what is going on? When to errant people just want to flex their ego and then have people dying because they think one way or the other.
Yeah, but the sad part of this is that what happens in Europe affects the rest of us, and we've seen the impact of the war in Ukraine and its impact on Africa as well. Just a few days ago, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy was in the United States for just a few hours. However, how significant did you think his visit was?
Well, again, U.S. is supporting him. We don't have our own soldiers, and what we call boots on the ground. But yeah, that's just, it's both symbolic and as well as it has some substance. It's just to, again, let Putin know that, hey, we're supporting the other side that is fighting you or that you're fighting. And what's that going to do at the end? Is that going to bring an end to it in such a way that the two neighboring countries will see need for them to have a peaceful resolution and then begin to live? Because people have died, but the two people as a kid. I mean, nobody sees him. He's in a safe environment, and then Zelenskyy is the same thing. At the end of the day, I always ask the question: who is dying? These are not animals; these are human beings. Because we have egos of leaders who have used their soldiers to go and cause havoc, in their own country or a country next to them. I don't think the war, we are no longer in the 17th, 16th century. This is 21st century. What are we fighting for? Is it mineral access to the mineral? Okay, can you have a share issue? Okay, we produce it, we share the revenue. What's this desire for dominance? Who are you trying to dominate? At the end of the day, every one of these leaders is going to pass and die, and life still goes on. So I have never really understood why human beings don't look at the sufferings they are causing on other human beings and pull back and say, what at the end of the day, nobody's going to live for 1,000 years. Even if you live to be 100, and so what? So I hope the Europeans should recognize, but it's up to the rest of the world. It's up to the rest of the world. You look at the entire European country, they don't have a billion population. If you add all the people that live there. But somehow that small group of people have managed to dominate the world and make the world look up to them. But why they ignore what goes on in your own part of the world is the world.
You put the book right at the doorstep of the rest of the world. What exactly can they do? I mean, this is Europe, and then this is Russia, this is Putin, and then this is Ukraine, and this is the United States and NATO.
Ignore them. Ignore them. I mean, they are presidents of the world. How many presidents do we have? Every country, no matter how tiny you are a president. You have the respect and the prestige of your office. You don't have to play second fiddle. You don't have to become second to anybody.
My interview with Edward Ejike continues after the break. Stay with us. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the Ukrainian president, was in the United States. He made an address to Congress assuring them Ukraine is alive and kicking. He also pleaded for support from, both houses, the Democrats, the Republicans, everyone. He's also getting the Patriot missile defense system, as promised by President Joe Biden, as well as more military funding from the U.S. Russia thinks that this is tantamount to a proxy war. President Vladimir Putin has even criticized the Patriot missile defense system, saying it's an old system. What do you make of this? First of all, Zelensky's address to Congress, what America has promised so far, and then Russia's response.
Well, again, America is supporting Ukraine, but America's support has not led to American soldiers going there. So, the America is giving them money and equipment. Now, how effective those equipment is going to help them. So far, it has. Because Russia move into Ukraine has been stalled, but again it is not leading to any end of the war. Nobody knows when this. Russia hasn't said, "Oh my God, Ukraine military might is going to overwhelm mine, and I'm going to now go into negotiation." So giving Ukraine the support is both moral, but American soldiers have not gone there. And that is one thing that America knows we're not going to do, because once you put American boots on the ground, then the war is going to escalate. So now it is a diplomatic back and forth, and again, part of fighting a war is always psychological. One side is showing, hey, I have more than you have, or I'm going to deal with you. So again, Russia is sitting there now. Russia is not budging. Ukraine, is putting up a force and putting up a good defense. So far, they haven't been run out like Putin had expected. So my point again is, these are two neighboring countries. We were taught, from childhood, believing in the Bible, love thy neighbor as you love thyself. But some of these things, we don't see it. You see the Rwanda-Congo situation, they are neighbors. Why? What's going on? It comes down to the ego of some of these errant presidents, who want to drag people into situations where people are dying and they themselves live in castles or fortresses and they're untouchable. So why are we not human beings? So yes, Zelenskyy came to America. Of course, is part of the gesture of supporting you. He spoke to Congress, but it's a Congress that what is it? It's a Democratic Congress. Now let's see what happens. When the Republicans take over in January with a Republican speaker, is it going to be the same thing? Of course, they will be supporting Zelenskyy. He's a Jewish guy. We know how Jewish Americans have influence on what happens in America, both domestically and internationally. But my point again is we are all human beings. Forget the level of ethnicity or tribe or whatever. What can we do to effectively accommodate each other so that the bloodshed will be less?
Do you think America is fighting a proxy war with Russia through Ukraine? Because that's also one of the accusations President Putin is making against the U.S.
Well, I mean, it's proxy by the support America is giving, but we don't have our soldiers. So just, giving him equipment and giving him money. I think there are something like $100 billion promised for Ukraine. American sanction against Russia and Russia oligarchy people obviously hasn't brought them down. So, these things, comes down to, the gamemanship of politics and wars and who wants to say, I'm superpower, I'm better than you. Russia is hanging in there. Russia is one of the most isolated countries in the world, but Putin doesn't care because that pressure hasn't made him to now go to the negotiating table. There have been effort by NATO and everybody else. There have been presidents who have gone in and met with Putin, diplomatically said it, but he's not bulging. So I don't know what would make him bulge. There are some people, dissidents in Russia, that have tried to say they're going to take him out, but they haven't done it. So, it goes back to the saying, Igbo people have that said, one man can never be bigger than the community. But obviously, that is a very wrong saying because we've seen what one man is bigger than a country. He's bigger bigger than millions and billions of people. So how do we have a structure that gives a particular individual the power to do some of these heinous things that they do, and everybody else folds their hands and just pray? I'm that kind of human being. When I look at suffering of people, I was like, why? Some of it is created, by individuals, and why can't we just, get along? You enjoy whatever it is. It's a resource control, it's a resource fight, but also those things leads to domination.
Can they really get along? I mean, Russia says, with President Zelenskyy visiting the U.S., there really is no room now to talk about peace. That Ukraine really does not want peace, neither does the U.S. want peace, by its own actions and by, releasing this Patriot missile defense system. No side actually wants peace in this war.
Well, that's true. Like I had said earlier, if Zelenskyy and Putin were to get together and say, "Hey, let's forget about NATO, let's forget about US and everybody else," what do you exactly need? Putin is afraid that here's a country that is very close to them, and they don't want them to be part of NATO. I think that's what led to this war. I think anybody who is concerned about international invasion of their own territory is going to have the same kind of fear that Putin has. I'm not saying that is right, but he's very concerned that, hey, if Ukraine were going to become part of NATO, then it's just too close for comfort. So, but why can't they just come together and say, okay, what is the regional accord we need to have so that you do your thing, I do my thing. I will not invade you, you will not invade me. I think that's basically, what this is all about. And if you go back to the reason for this is when that old Eastern Bloc came down, and then former Secretary of State George, what is his name? He served under Bush, Bush Senior. He was the one that get in and created the thing that is causing the problem today. So this thing hasn't started. It's not something that just started yesterday. It has been going on, but Putin saw an opportunity to now do what he's doing. Because again, when Trump was there, I'm not making a comparison. When Trump was there, nothing was going on. But as soon as, because he knew if Trump was there, there's probably going to be a different angle. Because this politics is all about angle. But once Trump was out, boom, he went in.
What do you think the former president would have done differently?
Well, I mean, he might, remember these things always boils down to relationship, whether, Putin and Trump somehow knew each other, or they respect each other's strengths and weaknesses. So if you remember when Trump was there, just like he took out the guy in Iran, there wasn't a whole lot of some of these things going on, because everybody was like, hey, this guy, he don't know what's going to do. So that's part of, everybody's always going to study you and see what your weaknesses are and see how you're going to react. And if they feel that your weaknesses are more than your strength, they're going to step in. You find it in every country. And so that's what's going on. But again, I am hoping that 2023 will become a year of peace for everybody. Ukrainians and Russians will get together and say, hey, okay, let's stop this stuff. Let's have a ceasefire and let's come to a regional agreement that, you don't invade me, I don't invade you. Who knows if the Ukraine-Russian war ends, is it going to be China, Taiwan, again, Asian thing, and everybody's going to be thrown into it. Come on, people. I don't understand it, and I probably will not, because by my own nature, I don't like people to suffer. I don't think it's worth it for people to shed blood while the presidents are all in comfort zones and they all be protected, and they make statements that just add more fuel to the fire.
And it is much appreciated. Thank you for giving us this humanitarian angle to the war in Ukraine. I appreciate your joining us on the program, Edward Ejike. Thank you again, and happy holidays. This is where we end the program today. Our last edition of Diplomatic Channel for the year. It's been a wonderful time spent here, and I hope it's been the same for you. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you in the new year.